Hi all. We are gonna start to sketch flat sketches, and we do that in style. So flat sketches are something that a lot of times tech designers create. Usually designers do the sketching, um, or something of that nature, and then they kind of pass off that to then tech design. So it's kind of that first step in creating a technical pack, which, as you all should know, a technical pack is basically the Bible of how to get a garment created. It has everything from, it starts off the first page of a developmental tech pack starts with the design lead sheet, which is what you'll create in this project. Then it'll have a BOM, a bill of materials, so it has all your raw materials. And then it has a specification sheet, or really what we call a spec sheet in industry. And that has all of the measurements for your sample size. And then once it kind of gets approved, that, your proto and fit sample gets approved, then it gets graded to all the other sizes. But really it is developed in one size, the sample size of your company or brand or retailer. A lot of times that's either a small or a medium for alpha sizing. And then it can range, it really ranges from, like, Anthropologie, our sample size was a 4. At Gap, it was an 8. Some other brands, it's something totally different. So that's where some of your fit issues kind of arise, is that the further the size, so like, let's say your sample size is a size 4, the further away that, like, the size is away from that sample size, the more problematic in fitting. So if your sample size is really low, like a 4, then people that are 14, 16, 18 are going to have a lot of problems in that fitting just because the algorithm is so messed up. That's a whole other topic, and I guess I could go on and on with that. So we're going to first start off, I've kind of talked about the general overview of the project, but I'm going to really specifically just kind of talk about getting, using the resources and getting them into style, and then really starting to create your flat sketches. So in your apparel collection folder, you have a big folder with resources, templates, examples, and links. All of these things you'll need to go through and you will use in order to finish the assignment. So the first thing you're going to do is, I will talk about this in class, the flat sketch examples. I'll talk about that a little bit further, but I can't help but talk about a lot of it while I'm doing these tutorials as well. But just know that we will go over these examples, and I will actually give you hard copies of this in class. But you can kind of refer to this for some examples, okay? The croquis family is the big thing that you will be using. That's really your template. So, these, though it's called a croquis family, obviously these are for flat sketch croquis. So everything is kind of very 2D looking, which is a little different than if you took 4280. We had croquis that, had a lot of movement that you were kind of sketching on top of, but croquis kind of used here as a very general term. So obviously we have the average woman, the petite woman, a plus size woman, average man, child, and then toddler. Unfortunately, in a lot of the resources from textbooks and things like that, they don't have baby. You usually just use the toddler kind of sizing. So with style, remember, it's really easy to kind of just copy and paste. So you can obviously, I just kind of download this, and then you kind of, again, depending on what you're trying to target, what brands, what you're trying to build your portfolio around, you will select the most appropriate flat sketch croquis for that. And in general, you'll kind of stick to one unless you have like a specific concept where you're, you know, going in between, where you're using multiple croquis. So I'm going to use the plus size woman, and so I just use, I just snip her in. That's just the easiest thing to do, honestly. So I just snip her in. It really doesn't matter as long as you get the full body. And then I go into style, and really I can just control paste, or control V, I should say. Oh, I was doing that instead of, so let me go in here and control V. So there is my kind of croquis. And this will really be a template. You'll kind of sketch on top of it. So some things that I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to turn down the transparency a bit. It just makes it just slightly, easier for me. I don't know why it's not translating. It's going down. Okay, whatever. So usually you can do the transparency. I don't really know why it's having issues for me. And it really doesn't matter on like the quality or anything like that, because this is really just a template. The other big thing that you'll want to do is you'll want to right click and you'll want to lock your selection. So that's kind of what you're going to want to do, because that basically means that, you know, you can't move it around, and you can kind of draw on top and you won't have any issues with it kind of moving around on you. So some things that you'll want to do before you really start sketching, which I'll actually do on a separate tutorial. So what you'll do here is you will use this thing called the symmetry line. So it has this look of like two triangles and a symmetry line. So you'll push that. And let me show it to you first. So what I do is you want to kind of cut it in half, essentially cut the body in half. And you really can just follow these great style lines that it has. That's what's kind of, so you just left click and left click. You'll start to see that this thing is called symmetry on. So it'll automatically be turned on, and then you can always turn it off. But for the purpose of sketching, we will keep it on. Some things that you need to really consider when you're sketching. You really need to think of what this garment is going to look like, because you will create the outer lines first, and then you'll work into then the style lines within, and then the stitch lines. So you'll kind of have, in a way, like 3 layers of lines and 3 sorts of different lines, and then you'll do like closures on top of that. So you really do have to think of what this full garment is going to look like first, and you will do that full outline first. Honestly, it probably would be best, like, let's go back to this really quickly and look at the resources. So let's talk about these flat sketch examples. So when I say the outer, I mean, I was being a little like dramatic with the line thickness, just so you guys could see kind of these 3 layers, let's just say. So like on this knit top, you will have to know, because like, so you'll start from this center line and you'll first sketch all the way, or you'll draw this outer one first, and it kind of gets reflected over. And normally you do this, like let's say you'll probably do it in a 2-point. Then you'll go through and do certain style lines, and those are really like where your seams are. So then that's when you'll draw just the armhole. For here you'll draw like where the inset would be, for the neckline, and then your kind of 3rd layer is then any of these little stitch lines, okay, and then like the ribbing. So that's why you really do have to think of, because one, that's just the way flat sketches are. Those are just always like, you know, it just very easily shows like what this like outer line kind of is, that's the kind of boundary of the garment. But it also when you go to fill, then it appropriately fills everything, not just with your solid, but then when you bring in any motif, meaning any pattern that you've created in another thing. So it just, honestly, you have to kind of think of it that way before you start sketching. You don't want to do any of, like, you would never want to go kind of on these, like, oh, I'm just going to do the collar, or I'm just going to do whatever the case is, because that will really start to mess up when it comes to you filling or adding any patterns, okay? So really think of this like outer design first, okay? So let's start there. I'm going to kind of pause, go to another tutorial when it really comes to actually sketching this out. But this kind of sets you guys all up ready to do your flat sketch. All right, see you in the next tutorial.